I am William Kumwembe with Business Time. It is a magazine program where we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country, courtesy of Old Mutual.
Insuring and saving with Old Mutual means growing crops, growing jobs, growing a future. Creating mutual futures, your money invested for the good of all.
Coming up in the program today, Malawi rethinks fuel import routes as officials explore pipeline option. We have the detail in an interview with the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Energy. And also in the program, Malawi Stock Exchange capitalization seen at 6.4 trillion kwacha. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome. This is Business Time, and in our main story in the program today, the government is contemplating getting fuel from Feruka pipeline in Zimbabwe via Mozambique, a move likely to cut the on-road transit distance and haulage costs compared to other traditional routes. Last week, a delegation from the Ministry of Energy, Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority MERA, and National Oil Company of Malawi was in Zimbabwe for talks with a Zimbabwean company that manages the pipeline. If it materializes, the deal would see the country saving on fuel transportation costs and time spent on ferrying the commodity into Malawi. This also comes at a time Malawi is among 10 African countries with the highest petrol prices according to global petrol prices data. We caught up with Minister of Energy Principal Secretary Afonso Chikuni.
Well, we started thinking about alternative ways of bringing in efficiency in the fuel subsector. At the ministry, we realized that most of the product is coming through the Tanzanian corridor. That is about 1,500 kilometers from Lilongwe and very close to 1,800 or 900 to Blantyre, which is very expensive compared to having to import the product through the ports in Mozambique. That's Nacala and Beira. Beira, to be specific, there's already a pipeline which goes to Harare in Zimbabwe. And when we first came and had a conversation with the company, CPMZ, the company that operates the pipeline, we were told that it is possible to have part of the product to Malawi through Feruka. So the trucks, instead of coming all down to Beira, which is over 800 kilometers, we will cut the distance by about 200 kilometers to Feruka. It's a thing that will bring in for the immediate term some efficiency in terms of the turnaround, because it takes 2 days for a truck to leave after leaving Beira to reach Malawi. We'll cut it by maybe half a day or maybe even a day on a turnaround trip. That's our immediate solution, apart from the combination of other efficiency and enhancement solutions. For example, Nacala, using a railway from Nacala to Liwonde is also another solution. The objective is to reduce the dependence on Dar es Salaam from over 90% at the moment to about 10% in the next 1 year. And the 90% should come down to the Mozambican corridor. The pump price might not significantly change, but there will be savings, obviously. Our discussions yesterday indicate that there would be a very huge reduction in transportation because they have offered us a discount. Ordinarily, Zimbabwe is paying $54 per cubic meter of the product, but for us, I guess that is to incentivize us. They will start us at $20 per cubic meter, which is a very, very big saving on our part. We haven't yet calculated a financial model in terms of the savings, but obviously there will be savings. And the most important aspect is the efficiency, the turnaround time that the Feruka offers compared to Bela. There are a lot of constraints. One of the biggest limitations for us to import the product to satisfy the demand is the availability of forex in our environment in Malawi. And this is one of the problems that we have struggled with for the past couple of months or years, and it has been exacerbated by the COVID outbreak in 2020 and then the Ukraine war last year. So in a nutshell, I would say that the biggest limitation for us to import is the availability of forex. But coupled with that is the turnaround, the time that it requires. If we have managed to get the money, the forex, it takes a long time for the product to move from Dar es Salaam to Lilongwe and Blantyre. So the Mozambican corridor is a fortuitous setup for us, and apparently we've only been using less than 5% of the corridor. There could be other issues, but that's why we're saying no. Let us bring in these efficiencies that are so much like when we don't have a product. NOIC, the Zimbabwean equivalent of NOCMA, have assured us that they have adequate storage, they have adequate headroom to include us in their planning.
Malawi Stock Exchange capitalization has gone up to 6.4 trillion kwacha, an equivalent of about 35% of the country's gross domestic product, a rate market analysts have rated as impressive. This comes as valuation of listed companies continue growing exponentially, with 2 of the 16 counters, Airtel Malawi and FMB Capital Holdings, having their market capitalization hitting 1 trillion kwacha. In an interview at the weekend with the Malawi Stock Exchange Chief Executive Officer John Kamanga says the growth signifies an important role of the stock market on the economy.
The value of the Malawi Stock Exchange has grown up quite astronomical, because sometimes you measure in terms of the impact of the stock market in relation to the economy itself. In this case, our market capitalization against the GDP, gross domestic product of the country, you find that we are ranging in excess of about 35%. That in itself signifies, in terms of the role the capital market, or especially the stock market, plays in this actual economy. Now that we have 2 companies which have reached a trillion market capitalization, is also in terms of actually a confidence booster to all the both local investing community as well as actually the international investing community, that at least we are in a position to provide an array of products which are available in the capital market. Currently, we have what we call the equity securities, which are the shares, and we have the government bonds, which are in excess of 50. And recently, we'll be also listing other government bonds, about 30 of them. 6 are in what we call the government bonds, and about 19, about 24, thereabout in the treasury notes. That signifies, in terms of the depth of our financial market. That's why I've already been saying that the financial market in Malawi is capable of providing the needed capital, especially to a state-owned enterprise, that you are able to realize and raise that capital domestically instead of putting pressure on the rate of foreign exchange by borrowing outside, when you can ably do it in Malawi, because the resources are available. Because currently, with the figures which have been released by the central bank, you find that the total pension funds available in the market currently, as of December 2022, is 2.6 trillion. Malawi Kwacha. And out of this, 60% is sitting on the Malawi Stock Exchange. So you can see in terms of the available financial resources looking for investment. And we believe that if we can come up with more products, more companies can come and list, we should be in a position actually to absorb these funds and be channeled into productive use, especially in terms of infrastructure development, which Malawi actually is in dire need of them. For example, in terms of road construction, the road fund could also utilize. We have the parastatal like ESCOM and the GENCO. You could utilize actually these funds in terms of actually the electricity generation as well as the electricity transmission under the ESCOM or even the GENCO unit, utilizing these funds which are available to be actually invested in this infrastructure development.
This is Business Time, a magazine program brought to you in partnership with Odd Mutual.
Ku Malawi timanena kuti chuma chili mu nthaka. Ndipo izi ndi zoona. Mutha kuziona zimenezi paliponse. Dzina langa ndi Chris Gadimani, ndipo ndimayang'anira banja langa pogwira ntchito ku Galamax Macadamia Nut Farm. Zonse zimayambira pa Nazare pano. Timasamalira mphukira kuti tikwanitse kudzala mitengo yambiri. Mitengo iyi ikakula, timasankhamo mtedza wabwino kwambiri okhaokha. Timafuna kuti mtedza wa Macadamia wa ku Malawi uzidziwika kuti ndi wabwino koposa. Chilichonse pa famu pano chimagwira ntchito kuti zinthu ziziyenda bwino. Mitengo yathu imayeretsa mpweya. Njuchi zathu zimathandiza mitengo kubereka zipatso. Amayi amundera amakolola uchi m'ming'oma. Ndipo ndalama zina zimathandiza sukulu ya pafamu pano. Timaphunzitsa ana zonse zokhudza mtedza wa Macadamia. Tikakolola kwambiri timalembanso ntchito anthu ambiri. Ndimakhala onyadira kukhala nawo otenga mbali mu zimenezi.
From the soil comes endless possibilities. Growing crops, growing jobs, growing Malawi. Your money invested for the good of all. We call this creating mutual futures. Old Mutual. Let's do great things every day.
Welcome back. This is Business Time, and moving on to the program. The Malawi Revenue Authority (MRA) has spoken highly of the banking sector's contribution to corporate income tax, with figures indicating that the combined commercial banks input paid about 70.4 billion in taxes in the first half of the 2023-2024 financial year. The amount is only 7% shy of the 76.3 billion corporate income tax that the sector contributed in the 2022-2023 financial year. It is also 17% higher than the 60 billion kwacha that banks contributed in the 2021-2022 financial year. MRA Commissioner General John Biswick said the banking sector's resilience remains essential for sustainable economic growth. More in this report.
During a Bankers Association of Malawi dinner held in Blantyre on Friday, MRA Commissioner General John Biswick said the banking sector's resilience remains essential for sustainable economic growth. He further indicated that the amount is 17% higher than the 60 billion kwacha banks contributed in the 2021-2022 financial year.
The banks are generally doing well, and actually for any economy to function very well, you need banks that are resilient and are also able to contribute to the growth of the economy. So in Malawi generally, you see the banks are on the right track. And for this, I wish to commend the players in the banking sector that's how they are performing. And because they are performing well, what it means is that their profits are also good, and thus they are able to contribute big chunks in terms of tax revenues to the Malawi government. No, it's a matter of banks performing well. They are performing well, I think that's what it is. So we are not strict. We treat all taxpayers the same, whether they are banks or they are in another sector. We treat them the same. So it's about them performing well.
BAM Director, who is also FDH Bank Managing Director Noel Nkuliji, said the industry remained resilient amid challenges facing the operating environment.
Obviously, from the results that have been published, the banking sector is doing quite well, but largely it's because of the resilience of the banks. Also the fact that the way the economy is operating, most of people would want to engage themselves in further financing, and therefore they are getting all this from the banks. So that's why the banks are doing quite well. The issue is that for every sector to operate, they always need some financing. And as the situation stands, there are certain sectors that are doing quite well, in the sense that after they get the financing, they are able to make sure that their operations are actually sustained. But again, there are also certain sectors that are not doing quite well, largely because of the shocks that the country has been facing, and as a result of that, it is also affecting their operations. But all in all these sectors are able to perform just because there is the banking sector that is able to finance them with their daily operations, with their daily needs. The other issue that is coming out handy is the issue of the forex situation in the country. Obviously, if the banks had all the forex available, I'm sure you could see quite a lot of activity in form of manufacturing, in form of certain inputs, in form of importation of certain essential goods. But all that is also being affected. So as a result of that, you find that yes, there are certain sectors that are doing well, but there are certain sectors that are being affected.
Recently, the government implemented a directive that banks that make more than 10 billion kwacha in profits should pay 40% of the tax.
Now, in other business news, the Malawi Union of Savings and Credit Cooperatives, MUSCO, has said gender policies are critical in empowering women to take up leadership positions within savings and credit cooperatives. MUSCO head of cooperatives and projects Riloy Banda made the remarks over the weekend during a two-day Global Women's Leadership Network Malawi Sister Society Conference in Salima District. We have the whole story in this report by Matilda Majawa.
Banda said some existing policies need to be revised to achieve women empowerment in both the workplace and business world.
Gender policies in circles are very crucial because they will assist to guide how in circles gender is being mainstreamed. The purpose of that is we in MUSCO and circles would want to empower women, both in leadership, these are elected leaders, but also employees. So we are challenging our women to say they should step up, present themselves to take leadership positions. Now, for that to be institutionalized, we need policies. So I was emphasizing on the gender policy that is, as institutions, circles, and even at MUSCO, we need policies. We have the policies, but we need to revise them so that they are in line with the current situation. There are small things that we need to pay attention to. I mentioned about the issue of maternity leave. You remember the CEO of Moody talked about joining the circle when she was pregnant and being during probation period, she wouldn't take maternity leave. So we're saying, can that be looked into? But it was good the way the directors at Moody handled it, because they were able to say she was going to work half a day, the other half of the day she would be working at home. So such issues need to be paid attention to so that women are given the space, but also they are also taking care of their roles.
In support of these views, Toela Jalakasi, Managing Director of Naturals Limited, acknowledged the challenges women face in enterprise development. Jalakasi says a forex shortage is affecting small and medium enterprises, SMEs in the country, in addition to policy rate disparities on the market.
Yeah, the issue of forex shortage is really impacting on the businesses in Malawi. especially when you look at the disparities that are there, when you look at the government rates, the bank rates, and now the rates that we are getting on the informal markets or the alternative financing mechanisms. The huge is very big. So for a business like myself, if I want to buy something, I would get my forex on the alternative financing institutions, and that would be at a very high rate. When I bring that product into the country, in terms of pricing, you are finding that the prices are really very high. At the same time, it's also very difficult to access the forex when you're looking for it, because we cannot progress without access to the forex that we need to buy raw materials, to buy machinery, even to transport the goods that we are getting from outside Malawi. Yes, we would want to improve on the exports, but for us to be able to improve on the exports, we need government to ensure that we have got a very fair market play in as far as the forex exchange rates are concerned. For as long as we have these disparities, the market will not be fair to everyone.
This year's theme for the annual conference was Empowered Women, Breaking Barriers. GWLN, Malawi Sister Society, is a grouping that was established in 2012 and aims at advancing women in leadership positions in circles and provides a platform for networking.
Well, with that story, we've also come to the end of today's edition of the program Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines, courtesy of Old Mutual. On behalf of the entire production team, my name is William Kumwembe, but always remember, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. Thanks for watching and bye for now.
Brought to you by Old Mutual. Creating mutual futures, your money invested for the good of all.